Hi there, I'm Delphine. My sister threw a birthday party, and everyone was invited, except me. No warning, no reason, just silence. Then I found out it wasn't a mistake, it was planned. My own mother told her not to include me. And the worst part? It wasn't the party. It was realizing they've been erasing me for years, mocking my job, calling me too serious, sending my gift back without a word. So I packed my bag and disappeared. But what happened after I left? Let's just say, when the truth came out, the party didn't just fall apart. It exploded. It was a slow Saturday morning in Asheville. I was still in my robe, standing barefoot in the kitchen, waiting for the kettle to finish its familiar whistle. The soft hum of cicadas filtered through the window screen, and for a second, everything felt comfortably quiet. I reached for my phone to scroll, something mindless while the coffee steeped, but the first post on my feed stopped me cold. There she was, Marla, my sister, grinning in a group selfie at pre-birthday brunch. Filtered sunlight washed over their table full of mimosas, flowers, and at least 12 faces I recognized. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. I blinked, then I scrolled. Another angle, another shot of Marla holding up a birthday babe card. Still nothing from me, no invite, no heads up, not even a wish you were here. I stared at the photo a little too long. Then I closed Instagram. Reopened it. Same photos, same knot in my chest. I flipped over to my texts. Nothing new from Marla. I scrolled back through our last conversation, 2 weeks ago, me asking if she wanted to grab lunch when I was free on a Tuesday. She left it on read. I sat down at the kitchen table and held the mug like it might offer an answer. Surely it was a mistake. Maybe it was last minute. Maybe it was a surprise thrown by friends. I opened the group thread with our cousins. No messages there either, but Odessa had posted a story. The same damn brunch. Only this time I could hear Ramona's voice in the background, laughing. I sent Odessa a quick message. Hey, random question. Was that brunch for Marla's birthday? Her reply came 10 minutes later. Yeah, kinda last minute. They said it didn't make sense to invite everyone. Aunt Ramona told Marla not to bring heavy energy into the day. I stared at that line. Heavy energy. Right. I didn't answer Odessa. There was nothing left to say. By noon, I'd talked myself halfway out of being hurt. Maybe they wanted something more upbeat. Maybe I'd been distant lately. Maybe they didn't know how I'd take being around new people. But then again, wasn't I family? Wasn't I the one who helped Marla move across 3 states when she quit her job in Ohio? Wasn't I the one who drove our mother to her post-op appointments when nobody else stepped up? I waited until later that afternoon to call Mom. I didn't want to sound bitter. I just needed to understand. She picked up right away, that familiar cheer in her voice. Hey, sweetheart, everything okay? I tried to keep it level. Did you know about Marla's brunch this morning? There was a pause. Then she exhaled like she was already tired of the topic. Oh, honey, that was just a little gathering. You're reading into it. No one told me. It wasn't that kind of event, she said. Just a few of the girls from her Pilates group. She had balloons that said birthday queen. I said it flat. Odessa was there. Ramona, too. Mom gave a soft chuckle, that condescending hum she uses when she wants to act like I'm being ridiculous. It wasn't for you, sweetheart. That's all. You know how these things go. I paused. Let that settle. It wasn't for me? Sometimes it's just easier when everyone's energy matches, she continued, oblivious or maybe just willfully blind. Marla didn't want anything heavy. I think you understand. No, I replied slowly. I really don't. Well, don't make this bigger than it is. There it was, that tone, as if I were always the one turning things into something more, as if I hadn't spent the last decade absorbing every slight, every cold shoulder, every missed invitation without making a scene. After I hung up, I didn't move for a long time. I just stared at the floor, letting the static buzz in my head fill the space where words should have been. My heart didn't race. My chest didn't burn. It was a different kind of ache. Duller, heavier, familiar. Later that night, Odessa texted again. I didn't ask, but she sent it anyway. Ramona told Marla not to invite you because you tend to make things serious. I didn't even bother replying. I wasn't crying. I didn't feel explosive rage or heartbreak. What I felt was deeper, like something slowly detaching itself. A strand that had held me tethered finally slipped loose. That night, instead of watching a movie or folding laundry like I normally would, I opened my laptop. I typed in solo beach vacation and let the search bar fill with possibilities. Cabo, Santa Barbara, Palm Springs. I was done wondering what I did wrong. They wanted a celebration without me? Fine. I'd give them silence, and let's see how well they enjoy it. After closing my laptop that night, I lay still in bed for hours. No television, no music, just silence and the low hum of the fridge in the kitchen. I didn't cry. I didn't rant or spiral into dramatic thoughts. Something inside me had simply shifted, quietly, permanently. The next morning, I turned my phone to silent and took a walk near Carrier Park. The air was crisp, the sun playing peekaboo through the trees, and for once the chaos of my family felt miles away. That peace lasted almost 48 hours. On Tuesday afternoon, as I sat with a cup of tea and a worn-out copy of The Untethered Soul, my phone buzzed across the table. Marla, hey, coffee this Friday? Just that. No apology, no context, no mention of the brunch. I stared at the screen long enough for it to dim. My first instinct was to delete the message and keep moving. But something in me, the part that used to make excuses for her, wondered if she'd finally grown up. Or maybe I was just curious enough to see how far she'd lean into the lie. Me. Sure, where? She sent a location downtown, a popular cafe where people pretended to journal, but mostly watched each other in overpriced sunglasses. The kind of place she loved for the vibe and the hashtags. I showed up 5 minutes early. I wasn't nervous, I was prepared. Prepared for her to spin a new version of events. Prepared to be patient, but not polite. I wore my soft gray sweater and left my makeup minimal. Nothing performative, just myself, fully present. She walked in right on time, all smiles and bounce, like we hadn't gone days without speaking. You look refreshed, she said, sliding into the chair opposite me. I tilted my head slightly. Thanks. She waved over the server with a practiced flick of her hand, then turned back to me. I figured we should catch up. Last week felt a little off. I raised an eyebrow. You think? She leaned back with that signature sigh she used in high school when I asked too many questions. Look, I didn't think the brunch would interest you. It was kind of a party vibe. You're not really the party type, Delph. There it was, the jab wrapped in silk. I took a slow sip from my mug. So I don't vibe with mimosas and fake laughter? Marla smirked, but her eyes flicked away. You always read too much into everything. You could have just said, hey, I want to come. You're my sister. I didn't think I had to ask for an invitation. She shrugged. You've just always been more intense. I wanted the day to be light. I let the silence sit. I wanted her to feel it, but she filled it anyway. Don't get all worked up again, she added, trying to laugh. Remember when I told that story about your therapy stuff? Everyone thought it was hilarious. I stiffened. Which story? I asked, though I already knew. Oh, that dinner thing at Jen's house? I told them how you always give people, emotionally correct homework, she said, putting air quotes around it. I even did your calm voice. And how did that make you feel? She chuckled. It killed. She actually thought it was funny. I remembered that night. I'd felt off, like the energy had shifted. I just hadn't known she'd weaponize my work for sport. You mocked my clients, I said, my voice even. You turned what I do into a joke. She blinked. Come on, it wasn't that deep. You're being sensitive. That word, sensitive. My palms curled against the ceramic mug. I kept my breath steady. Marla, I said, if being self-aware and emotionally literate makes me a buzzkill, then I'll gladly be the rain on your fake parade. She blinked. It was just a party. No, I said quietly. It was just your way of reminding me that I've never quite belonged at your table. We sat in a silence that wasn't peaceful. It was performative, her trying to decide what mask to put on next. She reached for her purse like she was already bored. Well, don't be dramatic. I was just trying to include you again. I stood up. Don't. You excluded me on purpose. And now you want a gold star for offering lukewarm coffee? She rolled her eyes. God, you really are exhausting sometimes. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I placed a $10 bill on the table, mine and hers, and walked out. The fall breeze hit me square in the face as I stepped outside, but I welcomed it. At the crosswalk, I pulled out my phone and typed 5 words. Last-minute vacation deals for one. Back at my apartment, the hallway felt longer than usual. I tossed my keys onto the kitchen counter and slid my coat off with one hand while pulling my laptop from my tote with the other. I didn't even turn on the lights. Just the faint blue glow of the screen illuminated the living room as I settled on the couch with a glass of Merlot and a faint, familiar ache behind my ribs. The search tab was still open. Beach destinations, spa resorts, single traveler packages. I bookmarked a page for a boutique resort in Palm Springs. Ocean adjacent, but not too touristy. It looked warm, detached, like exactly where I needed to be. But before I could book anything, my brain started doing that thing again. Unpacking memories I never asked for. I remembered a Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago. We were at Aunt Ramona's place, a long table crowded with overcooked stuffing, half-warm casseroles, and a room full of voices trying to talk over one another. Someone had just asked about my love life, joking, I think, but the kind of joke that was never actually light. And Ramona, with her perfect lipstick and snide timing, raised a glass and said, "Delphine, she's still single because she's too intense. She makes everything a therapy session." Everyone laughed, even Mom. I smiled then. I really did. I played it off with a little eye roll and a sip of wine, but inside it stuck, like a shard I'd never been able to dig out. I remembered how I looked down at my plate and couldn't taste a thing after that. I took another slow sip of my wine and clicked on another resort ad, but the next memory came before I could stop it. Odessa's voice this time, in a quiet kitchen at one of our cousins' weddings. She'd pulled me aside almost apologetically and said, "Just so you know, your mom told Marla not to invite you to her engagement party. She said you'd overanalyze everything and make it awkward." I'd brushed it off in the moment, told Odessa it was fine, I probably would have skipped it anyway. But I remembered going home and staring at my phone, wondering how many other things I'd been strategically cut from. So no, it wasn't just a birthday brunch. It was a pattern, a quiet removal, a way of making me feel like an accessory they could leave behind when the room didn't call for depth. The phone buzzed against my leg. A new message from Mom. Corliss. "Hope you and Marla cleared things up. Let's avoid more drama, okay?" I didn't respond right away. I let the words sit there, dry and shapeless. They sounded like peace, but tasted like blame. I hadn't heard those exact words in years, but I could hear the old ones hiding beneath them. "You've always been the one to ruin the mood." They used to say it when I cried at Grandma's funeral, while everyone else posed for family pictures. When I brought up Dad's absence during Christmas and got the "why can't you just enjoy today" treatment. I'd spent a lifetime absorbing these messages. They never screamed, but they built a prison just the same, one soft jab at a time. I closed the text and opened a blank page in my journal. "I've been the emotional sponge for this family long enough," I wrote. "I'm done playing the part they cast me in." Then, with my heart thumping at a calm, even pace, I went back to the booking site. This time I didn't browse. I chose the Palm Springs resort with the soft linen bedding and ocean view balcony. I entered my credit card information, clicked confirm, and watched the screen flash with a booking number. It felt like I'd just signed a declaration. Not of war, but of freedom. I sat still for a moment, letting it all land. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was mine. Before bed, I opened my photo folder and scrolled to the saved brunch pictures Marla had posted. There was one where she was laughing with a flute of champagne in her hand, surrounded by women wearing florals and fake smiles. I selected them all. Deleted. Then I closed my laptop and whispered aloud, to no one but myself, "Let's see how it feels to disappear on purpose." The next morning, I made my usual cup of coffee but didn't drink it. I left it on the counter, untouched, as I sat on the edge of the bed scrolling through emails. Nothing urgent. A newsletter from my yoga studio, a sale on compression socks, a receipt from the resort, and then, almost as an afterthought, a Venmo notification. "Marla sent you $135. Note, for the necklace, didn't match the vibe." No, thank you. No, I appreciate the gesture. Just that. Didn't match the vibe. I stared at the screen like it had spoken out loud. She didn't return the necklace, just the money. A refund. Like I was a failed transaction. I remembered picking out that necklace. It was delicate, custom-made, sterling silver with 3 small birthstones, mine, hers, and our late grandmother's. I'd spent weeks deciding on it. I'd written a small note in the box, too, because some ties aren't just blood, they're choice. She didn't even mention the note, didn't ask if I wanted it back, just wiped it away with a refund. I locked my phone and sat in silence, my fingers resting lightly on my knees. I knew better than to expect grace, but even still, that stung in places I thought had gone numb. Later that afternoon, while folding laundry and trying not to think, Odessa's name flashed across my phone. Odessa. Just so you're not blindsided, they moved the party up. It happened last night. I froze mid-fold. I opened Instagram and typed Marla's name into the search bar like it owed me answers. The first story hit immediately. Her beaming, arms around a cluster of people, balloons floating behind her. Surprise pre-birthday bash! There were over 50 people there. I counted. Even Ramona was in a sequined blouse, holding up a glass of champagne next to Mom. Marla wore a sash, a tiara, the works. She hadn't just excluded me. She'd rescheduled the whole event, so I wouldn't come. I clicked out of the app, walked to the kitchen, and gripped the counter until my fingertips turned white. Then I sat down, stared at the refrigerator door for 5 whole minutes, and told myself not to scream. That's when Odessa sent the second message, this time a voice memo. "Hey, I'm not trying to stir anything," she said softly, "but I thought you should know. They planned it that way on purpose. Your mom literally said, it'll be less awkward without Delphine." There was a pause, then a sigh. "I'm sorry, I hate being in the middle. I just didn't think it was fair not to tell you." I played it again, and then I deleted it. Not out of anger, but because I refused to let it live in my phone like some invisible bruise I'd poke over and over. Instead, I opened Airbnb. I'd already booked the resort. Now I needed peace for the in-between. I chose a small house just outside Palm Springs. It had white stucco walls, an outdoor shower, and a cactus-lined driveway. I paid in full, added no guests, and clicked confirm. I didn't post about it, didn't even save the confirmation email to my main folder, but I opened my journal. "They edited me out," I wrote. "Let's see how they do when I truly go missing." That evening, as the sun dropped behind the Blue Ridge Mountains, I laid my suitcase open across the bed. I pulled a few dresses from the closet, nothing flashy, just linen and cotton and a bathing suit that still had a tag on it. Before zipping it shut, I grabbed my charger, my book, and one final thing, the tiny photo of Grandma that I kept taped behind my mirror. She would have told them all off, I thought. I didn't cry. I just folded the image into a scarf and tucked it in the side pouch. Then I looked at my reflection, at the woman who'd once begged to be included, and said it aloud. They wanted me invisible. Let me give them what they asked for. The sky was still heavy with night when I zipped my suitcase shut, slid on my sandals, and tucked the scarf into the side pocket. The one I always used for important things. The scarf wasn't fancy, just soft, and it held Grandma's photo, carefully folded inside. A quiet anchor. I didn't send a text. I didn't write a note for the fridge. I didn't pause in the hallway to listen for a sign, a voice, a reason to stay. I simply left, closing the door behind me as gently as I could, as if to say goodbye without needing to be heard. Outside, Asheville was still asleep. The morning air was cool and still, painted with a faint lavender hue where the sky flirted with dawn. I wheeled my carry-on across the porch and down the steps, each click of the wheels echoing louder than my thoughts. At the airport, the line was short, a blessing I didn't ask for, but took gladly. By the time my flight taxied to the runway and lifted off the ground, the sun had spilled over the Blue Ridge Mountains, stretching light across the clouds like a silent promise. I didn't look back. I didn't open my messages. I just reached for my phone and switched it to Do Not Disturb. That, too, was a kind of takeoff. Dallas was just a layover, but it could have been another life. I moved through it like a ghost, quiet, intentional, untouched. When I boarded my second flight to Palm Springs, I sat by the window, let the warmth of the rising sun seep through the glass, and finally exhaled. Touching down in California felt like stepping into another dimension. The heat was dry, sure, but it wrapped around me like something familiar, yet entirely new. I squinted up at the sky. It was wider here. Or maybe I just felt smaller. In a good way. You can fly across the country and still carry the same baggage, I thought, tugging my tote strap higher on my shoulder. But maybe this time I won't unpack it. At the resort, the concierge greeted me with a smile that was a little too practiced and a tray of lemon water. I took the glass, not because I wanted it, but because I could. A choice. Mine. My suite was quiet elegance. Crisp white sheets. A massive window that opened to a view of the hills, and a balcony that looked like it had been built for peace. I dropped my bag without ceremony and stepped onto the balcony, stretching my arms like wings. I didn't need anyone to know why I was here. I just needed to remember that I'd chosen to be. The afternoon passed like a song I didn't have to learn. I slipped into a swimsuit, found a lounge chair near the pool, and let my book fall open beside me. I wasn't reading, I wasn't thinking, I was just there. And then the buzz. My phone vibrated twice, sharp and unwelcome against the fabric of my towel. Marla. The message read, "Heard you're traveling. I figured you wouldn't come anyway. Not everyone needs you all the time, you know?" That was it. No emoji, no question. Just a sentence soaked in the kind of sugar that leaves your mouth dry. I stared at it, once, then again. A laugh broke out of me. Quiet, hollow, but honest. I hadn't expected rage, or sadness, just this strange, exhausted clarity. I whispered to the breeze, "Not everyone deserves me either." I didn't answer. Didn't need to. Instead, I opened my gallery and took a picture of the drink on the table beside me. Bright orange, silly umbrella, my toes in the bottom corner, ocean in the background. I didn't post it. Not yet. I let the words in her message sit beside me like someone I didn't invite but couldn't quite make leave. That voice. It wasn't new. It echoed with something I'd heard before. Years ago, at one of Mom's anniversary dinners, after another emotional cleanup session following one of Marla's outbursts, Odessa had leaned in and said it like it was the weather. "You know you're the emotional trash bin for this family, right?" I'd blinked at her. "Excuse me?" She didn't flinch. "Everyone dumps their drama on you, their shame, their resentment. You're the sponge, Delphine. You soak it up so they don't have to look at their own mess. Then you wring yourself out in time for the next gathering." I hadn't known what to say then. But now, here far away, held by sunlight and silence, I understood. They weren't just careless. They were conditioned. And I had allowed it. Until now. After a long soak in the tub, I wrapped myself in the resort's robe and tied my curls up. I scrolled through spa options and booked the most expensive one. Massage, facial, lunch, everything. Why not? Then I did one more thing. I changed my phone's lock screen. 3 words, white on black. I am enough. Later, under the sun, I finally posted. The infinity pool. The mid-afternoon glow. My caption. Relearning how to belong to myself. It didn't take long. The screen lit up. Mom, Marla, Odessa, others. Missed calls. "Where are you? Call me. You need to stop this." I didn't reply. Instead, I walked to the beach bar, ordered something fruity and over the top, and asked for a blank postcard. Back in my lounge chair, I wrote just one sentence. I choose me this time. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like the only truth that mattered. The postcard still sat on the nightstand beside me, curling slightly at the edges from the ocean breeze I'd let sweep through the room all night. I hadn't sent it. I didn't need to. It wasn't for them. It was a strange kind of peace, waking up without bracing for the first message, the first slight, the first apology that's not an apology. Instead, sunlight spilled across the floor, warm and soft, and I opened the blinds with a smile that felt unstolen. I brewed a cup of hotel coffee, carried it out to the small patio, and let my bare feet rest against the cool tile. There were no sirens in the distance, no text alerts, no family drama waiting like a trapdoor under my morning, until Odessa broke the silence. Her message was short. Odessa, not sure if you've heard, but Vernon walked out in the middle of the party. I blinked at the screen, read it again. Walked out? I set the coffee down and pulled the robe tighter around me. The text sat there like a dare, some proof the universe was, for once, on time with its receipts. Vernon had been Marla's boyfriend for almost a year. He wasn't flashy, but he was grounded, steady in a way she'd always claimed to want, but never knew how to handle. And now, apparently, he was done handling it. I typed, "Why?" Odessa replied quickly, "All I know is..." They were in the middle of the cake thing, and he just walked out. No big speech, no scene, just left. The edges of my lips curled. It wasn't joy, it was validation. Weeks earlier, Vernon had DM'd me, out of nowhere. "Hey, weird question. Does Marla ever, twist things?" I'd stared at the message, my thumb hovering over reply for a long time, but I hadn't responded. Still, I remembered thinking, so it's not just me. He had seen it too, and maybe that tiny question, so cautiously worded, had been his first crack in the foundation. Maybe he'd been weighing the lies in her stories against the truth in her tone. And maybe last night, the scales finally tipped. I wasn't there. I hadn't even thought about being there. But apparently, I was everywhere. By late morning, I'd finished breakfast and walked back out to the patio when Odessa sent the video. "You'll want to see this." Someone live-streamed part of the party. I opened the clip expecting something blurry, half-heard. Instead, it hit like a slap in slow motion. Marla, champagne in hand, tipsy but poised, was doing an impression. Of me. Therapist's voice, slow breathing, mock empathy. "How do you think that made you feel, Marla?" she said in a sing-song tone, pretending to cradle a notebook and frown like a cliché. The room laughed, loud, unfiltered. In the background, Corliss stood silently beside the buffet, sipping wine, saying nothing. I didn't finish the video. I didn't have to. The audience had clapped. The performance had landed. She mocked the one thing I held sacred, my work, my words, my way of trying to help people. And she did it while I was hundreds of miles away, trying to stitch myself back together. I deleted the video and placed the phone screen down. No rage, just air, space, quiet. Later, as the sun softened into late afternoon, I posted another photo. A sunset reflected off the pool's surface, framed by palm trees. Caption: "Healing uninterrupted." Within minutes, the replies began. "Where are you? That doesn't look like Asheville, LOL. Even Odessa. They're panicking." I responded with 3 words. Let them panic. Because for the first time, their chaos didn't belong to me. Dinner was quiet, solo, perfect. A book in one hand, a sparkling drink in the other. I didn't need company. I had clarity. I had peace. But the silence didn't last. Back in my room, I checked my phone once more out of habit. 8 missed calls from Mom, 3 texts from Marla, another 4 from Odessa. The last one made me pause. "Corliss, your silence is what's hurting Marla most. Please don't make this worse." I stared at it, long and hard. Then, without responding, I slid the phone under the pillow and walked to the shore. The sand was cool, the wind had softened, and I let the water reach my ankles as I whispered into the night. "I'm not making it worse. I'm just no longer making it easy." I watched the sunrise through sheer curtains, light painting the white tile floor with gold. The waves lapped quietly beyond the glass doors. I took my time. 1 sip of coffee, 1 slow breath, 1 moment without needing to react. But peace doesn't last when you're everyone's missing puzzle piece. I unlocked my phone to check the time, and there it was, Odessa's name at the top of my notifications again, along with a screenshot. It was a group chat. Ramona had written, in her usual theatrical flair, "If Delphine had just been there, this wouldn't have spiraled like this. You know how she steadies Marla." Below it, Odessa had typed, "Just thought you should see what's being said." A follow-up message from Odessa landed seconds later. "Sorry, I didn't agree, just didn't want you blindsided." I leaned back into the pillow and stared at the ceiling fan turning slow overhead. There it was, the familiar shift of blame. They couldn't get their perfect evening, so naturally, blame the person who wasn't even there. I didn't respond. A few hours later, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a FaceTime call from Corliss. I let it ring through once, twice. Then I picked up. Her face filled the screen. eyes tight, mouth too calm to be sincere. "Hey, baby," she said gently, like I was a skittish cat. I didn't say anything. "Look," she continued, voice trembling like she'd rehearsed it in front of the mirror. "I know things have been tense, but this isn't the time to dig our heels in. She's a mess, crying nonstop. Vernon won't pick up her calls. Everyone's shaken." I took a long sip of my orange juice. "Uh-huh." Her tone shifted, like flipping a switch. "You've always been the one who kept the peace, Delphine. You're the fixer. We need you. Marla needs you. Twist the knife, why don't you?" I stared directly into the camera. "I didn't run, Mom. I left. There's a difference." She blinked. "That's not fair." "No," I cut her off. "What's not fair is asking me to clean up a mess I wasn't invited to." Silence. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes darted off screen, maybe checking to see if anyone overheard. "Don't make this worse," she said finally. There it was again. That phrase. Like I was the problem. Like my absence had undone an entire party, an entire family. I ended the call without saying goodbye. Later that afternoon, I lounged poolside with a book in my lap, the sun warming my legs, when Odessa messaged again. "Heads up. Marla's telling people you're jealous, that you're spiraling, unstable." I let out a sharp breath. Not quite a laugh. Of course she was. When Marla couldn't control the narrative, she'd burn the script and write a new one. One where she was the misunderstood heroine, and I was the dramatic sister unraveling in the background. I opened Instagram. Sure enough, there it was. A blurry picture of her with the caption, "Surround yourself with light when others bring storms." And the comments, vague enough to slip under scrutiny, but knowing eyes could see the target. She's always been extra. Sometimes people show their true colors. "I'm sorry you're going through this." I felt nothing, not rage, not humiliation, just clarity. Like the final puzzle piece snapping into place and confirming the picture I didn't want to admit I'd been seeing for years. I pulled up my contacts, scrolled to Corliss's name, hovered for a second, and hit block. Then Marla's name. Typed a message. "If your version of sisterhood is exclusion and slander, consider me relieved of duty." Deleted it. Blocked her too. Finally, I messaged Odessa. "Tell them I won't be answering anymore. I've given enough." That was it. No paragraphs, no emotional epilogues, just a decision. The breeze carried a faint smell of sunscreen and salt as I closed my phone and booked a sunset cruise departing in 2 hours. I needed to be near the water again, somewhere without voices tugging at my conscience. As I fastened the clasp of my sandals and grabbed my tote, Odessa's final message came through. "You're not going to believe what Grandma just said." I paused, smiled, and typed back, "I'll believe it when I hear it." The boat rocked gently under me, a rhythm I hadn't known I'd craved until I leaned into it. I stretched out in the deck chair, drink in hand, and opened Odessa's message. Grandma just went off at brunch, like in front of everyone. My eyes narrowed. I reread it twice. Then a second message popped up. She told Ramona, Mom, and even Marla, "If you had treated Delphine better, maybe none of this would have happened. You pushed the one steady person out, and now look at the mess you're in." I blinked at the screen and let out a short, stunned laugh. Not bitter, not mocking, just amazed. Grandma Edith. Of all people, she was the one who never raised her voice, never took sides. She'd always been the one stirring the gravy at Thanksgiving while everyone else stirred the pot. And now she was the one finally calling the circus what it was. I looked out at the endless ocean and took a breath that felt 3 years overdue. A final notification buzzed. Odessa had sent a voice note this time. "Also," her voice whispered, like she didn't want anyone hearing, "Grandma found out you weren't invited on purpose. She's livid. She told Mom. So you lied to me too?" I sat up straighter, my mind pulling at an old thread. Of course. Months ago I'd overheard Corliss whispering to Marla at a family gathering, low enough to pretend it wasn't meant for me, but just loud enough to sting. "Don't let Grandma know we left Delphine out. You know how she gets about fairness." Back then, I'd let it slide. Or thought I had. But now that memory echoed like a bell inside my ribs. The truth had finally come up for air. I didn't feel vindictive. I didn't feel the urge to blast it across social media or screenshot it to my therapist. I felt still. Like the fight had ended and I wasn't the loser or the winner. I was simply no longer in the ring. Back at the resort that evening, I didn't upload a photo. I didn't post a caption. I didn't reply to Odessa or Grandma or anyone else. Instead, I opened my journal and wrote in neat, deliberate cursive. They edited me out. Now I'm no longer waiting to be written back in. I'm not waiting for them to catch up. I've already gone. After I closed the journal, I went to my texts and deleted the family group chat without hesitation. The screen looked cleaner without it, like wiping off a mirror fogged from years of holding in my breath. Later that night, Odessa forwarded a short email Grandma had sent her to pass along to me. I opened it while curled under the thin resort blanket, the hum of the AC soft and steady in the background. Subject: just so you know, Delphine, I'm sorry. I'm sorry they made you the strong one. The one who always absorbed, always adjusted. I should have seen it. I should have asked better questions. You deserved more than what they gave. More than what I allowed them to give. Whatever you do next, know I love you. I see you now. Love, Grandma Edith. I didn't cry. Instead, I saved the message in a folder on my phone titled, Proof I'm Not Crazy. Then I whispered like a benediction, thank you. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was recognition, and that was enough. The next morning, I extended my stay at the resort, just one more day. Not because I was hiding, but because I was no longer rushing toward anything. I walked down to the spa lounge with my tea and stared out at the poolside palms swaying in the breeze. My phone vibrated once in my pocket. A direct message had come through from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. Whatever really happened, just know, some of us are proud of you. Not everyone believed the noise. I read it 3 times. I didn't need it, but I appreciated it. I typed my reply slowly, choosing my words like they mattered. One day I'll tell my side, but not today. I put my phone away and let the moment stay mine. The ocean was gentler that morning. I sat at the edge of the infinity pool, my feet trailing through the water as the horizon melted into soft blues and golds. My suitcase was zipped and waiting by the sliding door upstairs. My flight home was in 4 hours, but I wasn't rushing. Not today. I sipped the last of my tea, lukewarm now, and leaned back into the lounge chair, letting the final rays of vacation sun warm my skin. My phone buzzed once in my bag. I didn't check it right away. Eventually, curiosity won. I unlocked it to see Odessa's name across the screen. A screenshot, a group chat I wasn't part of. I enlarged the image. Ramona. Delphine's absence is the reason this spiraled. If she had just shown up... Corliss. We're trying to move past it. Please stop dragging this out. Marla. I'm not the villain here. She's been dramatic for years. This isn't new. I stared at it, the same way you might stare at an old bruise, knowing how it got there, but no longer flinching. I left the message on read. No replies, no inner monologue, no rise in my chest. Just quiet. They were still talking about me, still trying to find a place to lay blame, still spinning the wheel of guilt and hoping it landed on my name. But I wasn't on that board anymore. I stood and padded back into my suite. I had a few minutes left before checkout. I opened my journal for one last entry. I left for peace. I'm not returning for chaos. Simple, true, enough. By the time I reached the airport, the vacation haze had lifted but hadn't disappeared. Palm Springs had worked something loose in me, like shaking sand out of the folds of a closed towel. The residue of years, shaken free. I landed in Asheville just after sunset. The air was cooler, more grounded. There were no palms, no salted breezes, but there was still a softness to it. At the grocery store near my apartment, I picked up essentials: milk, tea, fresh greens, a small bouquet of sunflowers. At home, I watered my plants, swept the floor, and tossed my laundry into the machine. The kind of chores that once felt like routines now felt like mine again. Not obligations, just life. There were no voicemails, no texts I hadn't already muted. I unpacked slowly, carefully, hung up the dresses I had barely worn, laid the scarf with Grandma's photo back behind the mirror, and then I noticed it. A small box at the door slipped through the mail slot sometime while I was gone. I recognized the handwriting immediately, familiar looping cursive, slanted slightly to the right. Inside the box, wrapped in tissue paper, was a silver bracelet. Not flashy, just elegant. Subtle etching on the inside. You are not too much. And a note. Delphine, I can't change what they did, but I can say this. Asterisk. You never had to fight to be seen by me. I've seen you all along. With love, Grandma Edith, asterisk. I pressed the bracelet to my chest and let the tears sit in my eyes without falling. Just warmth, not ache. I didn't reply. I didn't forward it to anyone. I didn't post about it. I just held the moment. That evening, I curled up on the balcony with a blanket, tea in hand. The mountains stood silent in the distance, cradling the skyline in their old arms. A single star blinked above them. I took a long breath in and let it out slowly. Not everything had healed. Not all the pain had disappeared. But it wasn't raw anymore. It was just part of the landscape now. Not something to hide. Not something to explain. Just mine. I picked up my journal again, one last time for that week. I didn't need revenge. I needed freedom. And now, I write the rest of my life without waiting for them to read it. Then I put the pen down and let the quiet stay. And if you're still with me now, I want to leave you with this. Sometimes healing isn't loud. It's not a final confrontation or a perfectly tied bow. Sometimes it's walking away without needing to slam the door. Sometimes it's letting people misunderstand you and finding peace anyway. I used to believe that being quiet meant being passive. But now, I know it can mean power. Silence isn't always weakness. In my case, it was finally my choice. So if you've ever felt overlooked, like the peacekeeper, like the one expected to carry more than your share, just know this. You don't have to keep proving your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you. You are not too much. You are simply too real for people who prefer pretend. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from a family dynamic that no longer served you? Do you believe healing can happen without an apology? Or maybe you're still in the middle of your own story. Leave me a comment and tell me where you're watching from. If this story resonated with you, even just a little, type 1 in the comments so I know you're out there. And if you disagreed, that's okay too. I'd still love to hear why and where you're tuning in from. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you want more stories that speak from the heart, challenge toxic cycles, and honor the strength it takes to choose yourself.
As soon as Helen placed the teacup in front of me, I felt something was wrong. My mother-in-law watched me closely with a small, fake smile as I lifted the cup to my lips. There was something off about the tea. The taste was slightly unusual, though not enough to be obvious. "Does the tea taste strange?" she asked, pretending to be concerned. I took another sip, meeting her gaze. I knew she was testing me. "No, it's perfect," I said with a small smile, pretending not to notice anything wrong. "My name is Pamela. I am 35 years old, and for the past 6 years, my mother-in-law, Helen, has been trying to push me out of her son's life. She never liked me and made it clear in small, subtle ways. But this time, I knew she had gone too far. 3 weeks ago, I saw her in my garden, tending to some plants I had never seen before. It was strange because Helen always criticized me for not knowing how to garden. She often told me I had no talent for taking care of plants, so why was she suddenly so interested in my garden? Not long after that, she started insisting on weekly family dinners. This was unusual because she used to avoid spending too much time with me. "I just want us to be closer," she had said with a forced smile. If I hadn't caught her doing something suspicious, I might have believed her. One night, I got up to get some water and saw Helen sitting in the living room with her laptop. She didn't know I was watching. On the screen, I saw words like untraceable and poison symptoms. The moment she noticed me, she quickly shut her laptop. My heart pounded. Was she really researching poisons? That's when I decided to contact my friend Victoria. She's a toxicologist, someone who studies poisons. I told her my suspicions, and she helped me prepare in case something happened. Now, sitting at Helen's dining table, I carefully observed her. My husband, Jack, was working late. How convenient. "You know, Helen," I said, putting my cup down, "you've taken a sudden interest in herbs." She stiffened slightly, but then forced a casual tone. "Oh, I just like trying new things." I tilted my head. "How are you feeling?" "You look a little pale," she said, her eyes watching me closely. I'm fine, I replied, glancing at my phone. But I am curious about that new plant you've been growing. The one with the small purple flowers. Her face changed for a split second. I don't know what you mean, she said quickly. I scrolled through my phone. That's strange, because I have photos of you planting it. It's called aconitum or wolfsbane. Highly toxic. Helen's face turned pale. I don't. You know, I continued calmly. It's very hard to detect in poison cases unless someone is specifically looking for it. Suddenly, she shot up from her chair, her voice shaking. You're talking nonsense. I smiled and picked up my cup once more. Oh, I'm feeling perfectly fine. And that's when I knew I had won this round. I took a deep breath and leaned back in my chair. I've been taking an antidote for a week now, I said calmly. My friend Victoria helped me prepare it. Helen's hands started to shake. You're lying, she whispered, but there was fear in her eyes. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small recorder. I also recorded our conversation, I said, placing it on the table. And I have video of you planting and preparing the wolfsbane. Not to mention, I took screenshots of your search history. Her face turned pale. You went through my computer? She gasped. I shook my head. No need. You should really use incognito mode when searching for ways to commit murder. I stood up, pushing my chair back slowly. I've already sent all the evidence to my lawyer. If anything happens to me, the police will get everything. Helen sank into her chair, her whole plan crumbling before her eyes. She looked desperate now, like a cornered animal. You have to understand, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jack deserves better. Someone from a good family. Someone you can control. I finished for her. She flinched but didn't deny it. Just then, the front door opened. Mom? Pamela? Sorry I'm late. Jack's voice called out from the hallway. Helen's eyes widened in panic. I leaned in, lowering my voice so only she could hear. You have a choice, I told her. You can tell Jack everything or I will. Jack walked into the room, setting his bag down. He looked between us confused. You're home early, I said with a smile. Your mother and I were just talking about her new gardening hobby. Jack glanced at both of us. There was tension in the air, thick and heavy. He noticed the way Helen's hands trembled as she gripped the table. What's going on? He asked, his voice careful. His eyes moved to his mother. Mom? Are you okay? Before Helen could answer, I held up my phone and turned the screen toward Jack. Your mom has been growing some very interesting plants, I said. Do you want to explain what you plan to do with the wolfsbane, Helen? Jack frowned, his forehead creasing. Wolfsbane, he repeated. That's poisonous, isn't it? Helen suddenly burst into tears. But this time, they weren't the usual fake sobs she used to manipulate people. This time, she looked truly afraid. It's not what you think, she said quickly, turning toward Jack. I was trying to protect you. Jack's face darkened. Protect me? His eyes drifted toward the teacup sitting in front of me. I saw realization hit him like a brick. His voice dropped, serious and cold. Mom, what did you do? I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small recorder. Without saying a word, I pressed play. Helen's own voice filled the room. First, her fake concern as she asked if the tea tasted strange. Then my calm responses. And finally, the moment her panic set in when I revealed that I knew about the poison. Jack stood frozen for a moment before slowly sinking into a chair. His face had lost all color. He looked stunned, struggling to process what he had just heard. You tried to poison Pamela, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. His eyes locked onto his mother, filled with disbelief and anger. My wife. Helen's hands trembled before she suddenly screamed, She's not good enough for you. Her voice was filled with frustration and rage. She turned you against me. Everything was perfect before she came along. Jack's head snapped up, his expression darkening. His voice turned sharp. Perfect, he repeated. You mean when you controlled everything? When you scared away every woman I ever dated? I placed a reassuring hand on his arm, grounding him. There's more, I said, pulling out my phone. I swiped through the screenshots and held them up for Jack to see. They showed everything: Helen's research on poisonous plants, their effects on the body, and detailed instructions on how to make them untraceable. "She's been planning this for weeks," I said quietly. Helen slumped in her chair, her confidence shattered. She looked small, defeated. "I just wanted what was best for you," she whispered, barely audible. Jack's hands curled into fists.
No, Mom.
"You wanted what was best for you," he said through clenched teeth. "You tried to murder my wife." "But I didn't," Helen protested, shaking her head. "She didn't drink enough." "Because I knew what you were planning." I cut in. My voice was steady, but I could feel my own anger rising. "I've been taking an antidote for a week. But that doesn't change the fact that you still poisoned me. That was your choice." Jack's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone, his hands shaking as he unlocked it. "I'm calling the police." "Wait," I said, covering his hand gently. "Let's give her a chance. Maybe for the first time in her life, she can be honest." Helen looked up at us. Her mask had completely fallen away. She was no longer the powerful, controlling woman she had always been. Now, she was just a desperate, lonely person, afraid of losing her son. "When you married her, everything changed," she whispered, her voice trembling. She turned to Jack, her eyes filled with sadness. "You stopped coming by as much. You made decisions without asking me." She looked at me then, her expression raw. "She made you strong," she admitted, her voice breaking. "And I hated her for it." Jack swallowed hard. "So you tried to kill her," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. Helen shook her head, tears falling freely now. "I convinced myself it was for the best," she admitted. "I told myself you'd be happier without her. That one day, you'd thank me." She let out a shaky breath. "But I was wrong," she whispered. "I see that now." For the first time, I watched her closely, not as the woman who had tried to destroy my marriage, but as a mother who had let her own fear and control consume her completely. At that moment, I saw Helen for who she truly was, not the perfect, composed woman she had always pretended to be, but someone who had built her entire life around controlling Jack. She had spent years making sure he depended on her, scaring away anyone who threatened that control. But now, her carefully built world was crumbling. "The police need to know," I said firmly. "You tried to kill me, Helen. But what happens next is up to you. Will you take responsibility, or will you keep lying?" Helen's eyes darted between me and Jack. She hesitated, her lips trembling as if she wanted to protest. But then, after a long pause, she let out a slow breath and reached into her purse. She pulled out a small notebook and placed it on the table with shaking hands. "This is everything," she said softly. "My research, my plans, the dates I planted the wolfsbane." She looked up at Jack, her face filled with exhaustion. "I'll tell the police everything." Jack didn't speak, but he picked up his phone and dialed. Moments later, the call was made, and Helen lowered her head in defeat. She slumped even further into her chair, as if the weight of her actions had finally crashed down on her. As the distant sound of sirens filled the air, I knew one thing for sure: nothing would ever be the same again. I glanced at Jack. His face was filled with pain, but beneath it, I also saw something else: strength. We would get through this together. The truth, no matter how painful, was the only way forward. The next few months passed in a blur. There were endless police interviews, court hearings, and even family therapy sessions. Helen pleaded guilty to attempted murder. It shocked many people, but not me. Maybe, deep down, she finally understood that controlling everything wasn't worth losing her son completely. On the day of her sentencing, I sat beside Jack in the courtroom, holding his hand. Helen looked smaller than I had ever seen her. She wore a plain navy suit, her usual air of confidence completely gone. The woman who once ruled over every detail of Jack's life now looked tired and broken. When given a chance to speak, she turned toward us. Her voice was steady, even though her eyes filled with tears. "I spent my life trying to control everything," she admitted. "I thought I knew what was best for my son. But that wasn't love, it was control. And it nearly made me do something unforgivable. The judge sentenced her to 6 years in prison with mandatory psychiatric treatment. As she was led away, she looked back at us one last time. But this time, there was no manipulation in her eyes, only regret. Afterward, Jack and I walked through the courthouse gardens. He was quiet for a long time before finally speaking. "I keep thinking about all the signs I missed," he admitted. "The way she insulted you. The way she pretended to care, but was always just testing you." I squeezed his hand. "You see it now," I said. "And that's what matters." He nodded, taking a deep breath. We moved forward from here. And as we stepped out of the courthouse together, I knew we would. "I should have realized sooner," Jack said, his voice heavy with regret. I squeezed his hand gently. "She was your mother," I said softly. "You wanted to believe the best about her." He looked at me, pain and confusion in his eyes. "How can you be so forgiving?" he asked. "She tried to kill you, Pamela." I took a deep breath and thought for a moment. "Because I won't let her actions poison our lives," I said. "She's facing the consequences, and that's enough for me." Jack nodded, though I could see he was still struggling with everything that had happened. 3 weeks later, I received a letter from Helen's psychiatrist. With Helen's permission, he explained that she had been diagnosed with a severe personality disorder. Her need for control had consumed her, making her obsess over every detail of Jack's life. But now, for the first time, she was getting the help she needed. Jack and I decided to sell the house near Helen's and move somewhere new. A fresh start felt like the best way forward. We wanted a place where we could build new memories, free from the shadows of the past. While packing, I came across the recorder, the one with all the evidence from that night. I held it for a moment, remembering everything we had been through. "Should we keep it?" Jack asked, watching me carefully. I shook my head and pressed delete. "We don't need it anymore," I said. "Holding on to it won't help anyone heal." With that, the past was truly behind us. We bought a small house with a garden and I started growing herbs again, the safe kind this time. As I cared for my plants, I sometimes thought about Helen's wolfsbane. It was a reminder of how something beautiful could turn deadly, just like her love for her son. Love, when twisted by control and fear, could become dangerous. Jack decided to visit Helen in prison once a month. I didn't go with him, but I sent letters sometimes. Not because I fully forgave her, but because I believed people could change. Her replies were different now. They were honest, without manipulation. For the first time, she wasn't trying to control the conversation. She was finally becoming the mother Jack had always needed. After one of his visits, Jack told me, "She's changing. It's just sad that it took something this extreme for her to see what she had done." Last week, I received a package from Helen. Inside was a diary she had been keeping since her arrest. It was filled with reflections on her mistakes, on the harm she had caused. On the first page, she had written, "I spent my life trying to control others, only to realize the one who needed help was me. I'm sorry it took nearly destroying my family to understand that." As I closed the diary, I felt something shift inside me. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about forgetting what had happened. It was about letting go of the pain and choosing to move forward. And that's exactly what we did. I felt a sense of peace. The woman who had once tried to poison me was gone. In her place was someone finally facing the truth about herself, someone who was learning and growing. It wasn't a perfect, happy ending like in fairy tales, but it was real. And more importantly, it was hopeful. Jack and I are expecting our first child now. It's an exciting and emotional time for both of us. Some people ask if we worry about Helen being released from prison, about her becoming a grandmother. But we have learned something important. Real strength isn't about controlling others. It's about setting boundaries, being honest, and allowing people the chance to change. We know that Helen will never be the perfect mother or grandmother, but we also know that we are in control of our own lives now. If she truly wants to be part of our child's life, she will have to show that she has changed, not just say it. And if she hasn't, we are strong enough to protect our family. There was a time when I thought I would never move on from what happened. The betrayal, the fear, and the pain felt too deep to ever heal. But now, looking at the life we are building, I realize that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to move forward, even when the past tries to hold you back. The tea set from that night still sits in our kitchen cabinet. Some people might think it's strange that I kept it, but I don't see it as a reminder of betrayal. I see it as a reminder of my own strength. Every now and then, I take out one of the cups, pour myself some tea, and sit quietly for a moment. I think about everything we have been through, how far we have come. And then I smile, because I know now that the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's moving forward. It's healing. It's living well. Hi, I'm Laura, a 32-year-old department head at a company where everyone is driven. My life is a constant juggling act between being a mom to my lively 7-year-old daughter, Kelly, and managing the demands of my job. It wasn't always this way. I met my husband, Jacob, at this same company when we were both just starting out. I remember our first meeting clearly. I was having trouble with the copier, and Jacob came over with a grin. "Need some help with that?" he teased. I smiled and said, "I've got it, but thanks." That moment was the beginning of everything. Our work together, falling in love, getting married, and eventually welcoming Kelly into our lives. After Kelly was born, I took some time off to be with her. When I returned to work, I found out that Jacob had been promoted to department head. One evening, while I was going through some work documents at home, Jacob glanced over and said, "You're really into this, huh?" His tone was a bit sharp. I looked up, surprised. "Well, yeah, I love my job, you know that." Jacob shrugged, but there was something in his voice that made me uneasy. "Sure, but don't you think Kelly needs you more right now?" I sighed, knowing where this conversation was headed. "Jacob, we've talked about this. Kelly is doing great, and my mom helps out a lot. I can't just give up my career." The conversation eventually moved on, but his words stayed with me. This wasn't the first time he'd hinted that he wasn't happy with how much I cared about my job. 2 years later, I became a department head too, and Jacob seemed even more unsettled. His once playful jokes at home started to have a harder edge. One day, as I was preparing for a big presentation, Jacob walked into the room. "So, you're presenting to the board today?" he asked. I nodded, focused on my notes. "Yeah, it's a big opportunity for me." Jacob leaned against the doorframe, his voice laced with sarcasm. "Just don't forget who you're coming home to. Don't let this job take over your life, Laura." I stopped and looked up at him. "Jacob, what's that supposed to mean?" He waved his hand dismissively. "Nothing, just be careful, that's all." But it was obvious that it meant more than nothing. Jacob's attitude towards my career had shifted from being supportive to something more resentful, something I never expected from him. I fell in love on a Thursday evening, the kind where the sky turns orange and pink as the sun sets, peaceful outside but tense inside. We were sitting at the dinner table, with Kelly happily chatting about her day at school, offering a brief break from the unspoken tension between Jacob and me. "Mommy, look." Kelly beamed, holding up a crayon drawing of a woman in a suit. "I drew you at work. You look like a superhero." I smiled, touched by her sweet gesture. "That's amazing, sweetie. Thank you." Jacob glanced at the drawing over Kelly's shoulder, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "That's nice, Kelly, but remember, the most important job for mommy is here with us." My smile faded as frustration began to build. "Jacob, I think it's important for Kelly to know that her mom can have a career and still be there for her family," I said, trying to stay calm. Jacob sighed and put down his fork. "I just think you're taking on too much, Laura. Kelly needs you." I was about to respond when the phone rang, interrupting the growing tension. Jacob answered, and I immediately recognized the sharp, insistent voice on the other end. It was his mother, Julie. "Hello, Mom." "Yes, she's here." "I know, but Jacob's voice sounded a mix of resignation and frustration. I strained to hear Julie's words. Jacob, you need to put your foot down. Tell Laura to slow down with her work. It's not good for Kelly or your marriage. Jacob's response was quieter, but his words still hurt. I agree, Mom. I've tried talking to her, but she won't listen. Yes, I'll try again. He hung up, and I couldn't hold back any longer. Was that your mother telling you to get me to quit my job? Jacob ran a hand through his hair, looking exasperated. She's just worried, Laura. She thinks you should focus more on Kelly and less on work, and honestly, I can't say I disagree. I clenched my fists under the table, feeling anger surge through me. So now your mother is telling me how to manage my career? Jacob, I'm not just Kelly's mother or your wife. I have my own dreams. Jacob abruptly stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. And what about my dreams, Laura? Isn't it enough that I'm working hard to provide for us? I stood up too, my heart pounding. I'm contributing too, Jacob. Why can't you see that I can handle both my career and our family? He shook his head and let out a bitter laugh. Because every time you try to balance both, our family ends up suffering. With that, he stormed out of the kitchen, leaving me there, angry and frustrated. The tension at home was at its peak, but I had no idea that work was about to complicate things even more. It was a clear Monday morning when the director of our company called Jacob and me into his office. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation as we sat down. Laura, Jacob, I'm sure you're both aware of the upcoming vacancy for the operations manager position, he began, looking between us. Jacob nodded eagerly, a gleam in his eye. Yes, we've heard about it. The director leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Well, I wanted to speak with both of you because you're on the short list for the promotion. It's a tough decision, you're both highly qualified. I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness, but before I could say anything, Jacob jumped in. That's great to hear, but I think it's obvious who the better fit is. I mean, with my experience. I cut him off, my voice steady. Actually, I believe I have just as much to offer. My recent projects have significantly boosted our department's performance. The director raised his hand, signaling us to calm down. I appreciate both of your inputs. We'll make a decision in the coming weeks. Best of luck to you both. As we left the office, Jacob was clearly angry. Once we were alone in the elevator, he turned to me, his voice low and harsh. Laura, you should back out of this. I deserve this promotion. I looked at him, stunned. Why should I step down? I've worked just as hard as you, if not harder. Jacob's jaw tightened. Because I'm the man of the house. It's my job to be the provider. I shook my head, disbelief washing over me. Jacob, this isn't the 1945s. I have every right to go for this promotion. We exited the elevator, our footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. Jacob stopped and turned to me. This isn't just about the job, Laura. It's about our family. You're already stretched thin. Think about Kelly. I felt a surge of frustration. I am thinking about Kelly. I want to show Kelly that her mother is strong and capable, that she can achieve anything she sets her mind to. Jacob scoffed. Fine, but if you get this promotion, don't expect things to stay the same between us. His words were a clear threat, sending a chill down my spine. This wasn't just about a job. It was about respect and equality in our relationship. That evening, the tension at home continued. Jacob's mother called, and her disappointment was evident. Laura, I can't believe you're considering this. You need to let Jacob have this opportunity. It's the right thing to do for your family. Her words only strengthened my resolve. Julie, with all due respect, this is a decision for Jacob and me to make. I won't step down just because Jacob thinks he's entitled to the position. After hanging up, I looked over at Kelly, who was playing with her dolls, unaware of the conflict around her. I silently promised myself that I would stand my ground. This promotion was more than just a job. It was a statement that I deserved recognition and respect. But the stress from both the promotion battle and the tension at home began to wear me down. I started feeling unusually tired. My mind wasn't as sharp, and I struggled to focus. One morning, while trying to prepare breakfast, everything felt overwhelming. Kelly, can you please get your backpack? We're running late. I called out, my voice lacking its usual energy. Kelly, ever so observant, looked at me with concern. Mommy, are you okay? You look really tired. I forced a smile, not wanting to worry her. I'm fine, honey, just a bit tired. Things weren't much better at work. My performance was slipping, and it didn't go unnoticed. One afternoon, my boss, Mr. William, called me into his office. His expression was a mix of concern and professionalism. Laura, is everything okay? Your work lately hasn't been up to your usual standard, he said gently but firmly. I sighed, feeling a mix of embarrassment and frustration. I'm sorry, Mr. William. I've just not been feeling well lately. I'm not sure what's wrong. He leaned back in his chair, considering my words. I understand, but you know this is a critical time for the department, especially with the promotion on the line. Do you think you can manage your responsibilities? I nodded, though doubt started to creep in. Yes, I can. I just need a couple of days to get back on track. As I left his office, my mind raced with worry. What if this illness cost me the promotion? What if Jacob was right about me taking on too much? When I got home, Jacob was there, and his reaction was the last thing I needed. You look terrible, Laura. Maybe this is a sign that you should step down from the promotion race. His words hurt, and I snapped. No, Jacob. I'm just not feeling well. This has nothing to do with the job. He shrugged, with a hint of satisfaction in his voice. Well, if you can't handle the pressure, maybe it's for the best. I turned away, feeling a mix of anger and helplessness. I decided to take a few days off, hoping rest would help me recover. But instead of getting better, my condition worsened. The fatigue and brain fog wouldn't go away. One evening, I was lying on the couch, with Kelly sitting beside me, coloring. Mommy, don't be sad. I'll make you feel better, she said with her innocent, sweet voice. I smiled weakly. Thank you, sweetie. Mommy just needs to rest a bit. But as days passed, my health didn't improve. I started worrying that something more serious was going on. My time at home increased, curled up on the sofa with a blanket, feeling exhausted all the time. Kelly, my sweet daughter, tried her best to cheer me up, her innocent attempts at playing doctor both heartwarming and heartbreaking. One evening, as I lay there, Kelly came up to me with a serious look on her face. Mommy, I'm going to make you all better, she declared, holding her toy stethoscope. I managed a weak smile. Oh, is Dr. Kelly in the house? Yes, and I have just the thing for you, she said, running off to her room. She returned with a small, colorful pill in her hand. Here, Mommy, this will make you feel better. Daddy said it's a special vitamin. I froze, the pill in her tiny fingers sending alarm bells ringing in my head. Kelly, where did you get this from? She looked up at me, her eyes wide and innocent. From Daddy's room. He gives me one every day to put in your food. He said it's a secret game. My heart pounded in my chest. Kelly, sweetie, this is very important. Can you show me where you got these pills from? She nodded, taking my hand and leading me to Jacob's bedside drawer. I found a small bottle of pills that I didn't recognize. I hugged Kelly tightly, a deep sense of dread washing over me. Jacob's recent behavior, my strange symptoms, and now it was too much to be a coincidence. Kelly, thank you for showing me this. You're such a good girl, I said, trying to hide the turmoil inside me. After tucking her into bed, I took the bottle of pills and locked myself in the bathroom. My hands shook as I looked up the imprints on the pills online. The search results sent a chill down my spine. They were strong prescription medication, not vitamins. I sat on the bathroom floor, the reality sinking in. Jacob had been giving me these pills, pretending it was a game with our daughter. But why? What was he trying to do? The pieces were starting to come together, revealing something much darker than I had imagined. This wasn't just about the promotion or our marital issues, it was something far more sinister. With the bottle of pills and a heart full of dread, I knew I needed solid evidence before confronting Jacob. The next morning, I made an appointment with my doctor, pretending it was just a routine checkup. Sitting in the doctor's office, I showed him the pills. "Doctor, I found these, and I think I've been unknowingly taking them. Can you tell me what they are?" The doctor examined the pills, his brow furrowing. "Laura, these are strong medications, not something to be taken lightly. How have you been feeling lately?" I described my symptoms: the fatigue, confusion, and general unwellness. He nodded, taking notes. "We'll do some blood work right away. If these pills are causing your symptoms, it will show up in the tests." A couple of days later, the test results confirmed my worst fears. The medication was in my system, and it was causing my symptoms. I felt a mix of relief and horror: relief that I wasn't imagining things, and horror at the thought of my husband's betrayal. I looked at the doctor, dread washing over me. "Can these be bought over the counter without a prescription?" He shook his head, his expression serious. "Absolutely not. These are strong prescription medications. They can be very harmful if taken without proper medical supervision." His words hit me hard. This wasn't just Jacob acting alone, his mother, Julie, a pharmacist, must be involved too. It was a chilling realization. The three people I had trusted were conspiring against me, using their knowledge and access to harm me. I thanked the doctor and left his office, my mind racing. The drive home was a blur. I was in shock, struggling to understand the depth of the betrayal. Jacob and his mother had crossed a line that I couldn't even imagine. At home, I sat in the living room, the test results and the bottle of pills on the coffee table in front of me. The pieces of the puzzle were fitting together, creating a picture so dark and unthinkable that it shook me to my core. I knew I had to confront them, to face the truth, but first, I needed to make sure Kelly was safe. I called my mother and asked her to take Kelly for a few days, using work stress as an excuse. Once Kelly was safely with my mother, I planned the confrontation. I needed them to admit what they had done. I needed to know why. How could they betray me like this? How could they use Kelly, an innocent child, in their twisted game? The next day, I called Jacob and Julie, asking them to meet at Julie's house. My voice was calm, but inside, I was a storm of emotions: anger, betrayal, but most of all, determination. I was going to expose their deceit and protect myself and my daughter, no matter what it took. The drive to Julie's house felt like the longest of my life. Each mile seemed to stretch out forever. When I parked outside, my heart was pounding, and I gripped the steering wheel tightly. I took a deep breath, stepped out of the car, and grabbed the bottle of pills and the medical report from my bag. I knocked on the door, and Julie opened it with a fake smile. "Laura, dear, come in." "What's this about?" she asked. Jacob was sitting in the living room, his expression a mix of worry and defiance. I didn't waste any time. "Jacob, Julie, I know about the pills," I began, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside me. Jacob's face turned pale. "What pills, Laura?" he asked, trying to sound innocent. I pulled out the bottle and placed it firmly on the coffee table. "These pills, the ones you've been giving me through Kelly. My test results show they're the reason for my illness." Julie's eyes widened, and her fake smile faded. "Laura, this is a misunderstanding. Why would we do something like that?" Her voice was shaky, but her words didn't ring true. It's no misunderstanding, Julie. These are prescription drugs, and as a pharmacist, you would have easy access to them. Jacob stood up, his fists clenched. Laura, you're blowing this out of proportion. I was just trying to level the playing field for the promotion. I stared at him in disbelief. By poisoning me? By using our daughter in your scheme? Julie jumped in, her voice now desperate. Jacob was just worried about his career. He didn't mean any harm. I shook my head, anger rising inside me. That's not an excuse. You both put my life in danger and used Kelly to do it. That's unforgivable. Jacob's face showed guilt. Laura, I'm sorry. I didn't think it would go this far. Julie started to cry, her hands trembling. Please, Laura, we can fix this. Don't break up our family over this. But it was too late for apologies. This is beyond fixing, Julie. I'm going to the police. What you did is a crime. Jacob reached out, his voice panicked. Laura, wait. Think about what this will do to Kelly. I pulled away, my decision firm. I am thinking about Kelly. That's why I can't let you get away with this. She deserves better. Leaving them in shocked silence, I walked out of the house, determined to protect my daughter and myself from further harm. After leaving Julie's house, I went straight to the police station, my hands shaking as I held the evidence. The investigation moved quickly. Jacob and Julie were brought in for questioning, and the evidence against them was overwhelming. They were charged with poisoning, and a trial was scheduled. The day of the trial was tense. I sat in the courtroom, my hands clenched in my lap, as the prosecutor presented the case against Jacob and Julie. Jacob looked pale, and Julie seemed on the verge of tears. When it was my turn to testify, I took the stand, my voice steady as I recounted the events. I trusted them, and they betrayed me. They used my daughter to poison me. Jacob's lawyer tried to discredit me, suggesting I made up the story for personal gain, but the evidence was clear. In the end, the jury found them guilty. Jacob and Julie were sentenced to prison for their actions. As the judge announced the sentence, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow, relief that justice was served, but sadness for what had happened to my family. After the trial, I focused on rebuilding my life. I was promoted to the open position at work, but it was a bittersweet victory. Kelly and I moved into a new home, ready for a fresh start. One evening, as I tucked Kelly into bed in our new place, she looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes and asked, "Mommy, are you happy now?" I kissed her forehead, feeling a sense of peace. Yes, sweetheart, we're going to be just fine. And we were. Despite the pain and betrayal, we found strength in each other. I showed Kelly that we could overcome any obstacle and that truth and justice would always win. As I turned off the light and left her room, I knew this was just the beginning of our new journey, a journey of healing, new opportunities, and, most importantly, hope. Our future was uncertain, but I was determined to make it bright for both Kelly and myself. My mom and brother-in-law are going to be away for a while, so I decided to take care of my sister and niece. When I told them, my sister and niece smiled smugly. I couldn't hide my frustration and bit my lip. I know you don't like them, but they're my blood relatives, so it's natural for me to care for them. If you can't accept that, divorce is an option, my husband said. It's clear his family always comes first. Even though I struggle with housework and taking care of our child, he never helps me. So, why does he make his sister his priority? As his wife, I'm not powerless. He'll regret underestimating my efforts. My name is Sophia. I'm 37 years old. I live with my husband, who I met during school, and our 9-year-old son. Right now, I can't find a full-time job. My first job made me tired of dealing with people, so I work part-time while taking care of our son. I try to contribute to our finances, but I often feel exhausted and dizzy. I hand my husband what little money I can each month, saying, "I'm sorry." He always reassures me, "Don't worry about it." He respects my wishes, even when people tell me to just be a stay-at-home wife. I want to work, but my health doesn't always allow it, which makes me feel bad. When my son started elementary school, I got more time for myself and started feeling better. I eventually switched from part-time to full-time work and began enjoying my job. My husband and I met in high school. He was the class leader, serious and kind. Back then, I was a loner, but he always looked out for me. I fit into my class easily and don't have many bad memories from that time. My husband confessed his feelings to me on graduation day, and that's how we started dating. Eventually, we got married and had our son, Timothy. Timothy has always been cautious around others and isn't fully independent yet, but seeing him grow a little each day warms my heart. However, our happy days started to change suddenly when my husband's attitude toward me shifted. I had a feeling it had something to do with his older sister. The change began around the time my job was going well, and his sister had a traffic accident. My husband has 3 sisters, an older one and a younger one. I don't see them often, only a few times a year. He's always been very kind and caring toward them, which I used to think was sweet. When his older sister had her accident, I wasn't sure if I should visit her. I stayed home with Timothy, but then my husband, Stephen, called me. "Hello." I answered. "Hi, Sophia," he said casually. As I was about to ask if I should go see his sister, he said, "You don't need to come." I was surprised. "Why not? Shouldn't I visit her as your wife?" "Actually, Kelly doesn't want to see you," he said with a laugh. Kelly is his younger sister. He added, "I'm with Kelly and Helen right now, but they both don't want you here." I felt hurt, but my husband didn't seem to care. He often uses Kelly's words to tell me to stay out of certain things, which makes me feel unwelcome. "How is she doing?" I asked, worried about his older sister. "She's fine. Don't worry about it," he said with a heavy sigh. "Sophia, you're so insensitive. This is my family's problem, not yours." Then he hung up without letting me speak. I felt like he was being selfish. His family, especially Kelly and my niece Helen, have always been cold toward me. Helen acts distant, and Kelly sometimes treats me nicely, but other times she makes me feel like I stole her brother away. My husband, meanwhile, treats his sisters like princesses. It's hard to deal with. Even my son, Timothy, gets harsh looks from them. As I hugged Timothy, who seemed worried, I tried to stay calm and said, "Let's have dinner." Timothy looks more like me than his father, which I thought might make things easier, but it hasn't helped much. People have asked me if Timothy is really Stephen's child. We had Timothy before we got married, which might be why Stephen doesn't stand up to his family. Once, he even joked coldly, "If Kelly's right, we're getting a divorce." I always deny it with a smile, saying it's not true. I never thought Timothy would hear such a ridiculous idea, but one day he told me, "Dad said that." It's crazy to say something like that to your own child. That night, Stephen didn't come home, but Timothy and I had dinner and went to bed peacefully. The next day, Stephen came home with Kelly. She's still in high school and was wearing her uniform. As soon as they arrived, Stephen said, "Hey, Sophia, why didn't you prepare dinner?" "Kelly had to cook yesterday." I was shocked. "It was just us yesterday, so I made something simple," I explained. Stephen ignored me. "Kelly is here. Didn't you make anything?" "It's hard to prepare on such short notice," I said. Kelly chimed in, "That's terrible. I wanted cheesecake, especially from the shop near the station. I hadn't been told they were coming, but I apologized anyway." Kelly made more demands. "The cake shop is popular, so get in line and buy one." "Oh, and I'd like a chocolate cake too," she said. They both ignored me as I tried to explain. Instead, Stephen grabbed my hand, led me to the door, and said, "Be back by 5 p.m. since Kelly is here." Then he pushed me out the door without giving me a chance to speak. He didn't give me any money, and it was less than 40 minutes until 5 p.m. It felt impossible to get the cake in time. Feeling disheartened by Stephen and Kelly's selfishness, I got into the car. When I returned, Kelly scolded me, "You're late. My train leaves in 20 minutes. "I'm sorry. It's rush hour," I explained. "There are back roads, Sophia."
"Can't you think of that?" she snapped.
Stephen laughed and agreed with her. I had already taken the fastest route, but they didn't care. Frustrated, I bit my lip and went to my room to change, feeling completely defeated. As soon as I left, Stephen and Kelly started playing a game. Kelly opened a box of cake and said, "Oh, there's another cake here. Is this for Timothy?" Stephen replied, "Timothy won't be back soon, right? Just get him a new one from the supermarket." With Stephen's approval, Kelly happily ate Timothy's portion of the cake. I was speechless. Didn't they care about Timothy at all? Stunned, I left them laughing and playing their game in the living room while I went to do the laundry. Later, Stephen and Kelly went out for dinner. They didn't return by 5 p.m. like they said they would. If they weren't planning to be back by 5, why did they rush me earlier? When Kelly finally returned, I spoke to Stephen about it. He grumbled, "My older sister is in the hospital and my mom and brother-in-law are there too. Can't you be a little more considerate of Kelly?"
"It's not about that," I said.
"If you're not coming back by 5, don't rush me." "Oh, stop making such a big deal about it," he said, covering his ears. "I really meant to be back by 5. Next time, just make sure you prepare the meals properly." "I would have if I had known they were visiting today," I replied. But I wasn't told anything.
Stephen didn't care.
Everything always revolves around Kelly, and he never listens to me. After that, Kelly started visiting more often, and eventually Helen, my niece, began coming too. Helen is in middle school and acts like an older sister to Timothy. Timothy enjoys playing with her, which makes me happy, but I worry because Kelly is harsh on him, and Stephen never says anything to stop her. Over time, I noticed Helen started acting cold toward me too. One day, I asked, "Have you already eaten?"
"Yeah."
"Mom said we should eat as a family," Helen replied. It was Timothy's birthday. I had told Stephen to come home early for it, and he remembered. He even took the afternoon off, but instead of coming home, he went straight to his family's house with Timothy. When they came back, Helen handed me a present, and Timothy casually mentioned they had already had a party there. Both of them were full, even though I had spent the day preparing Timothy's favorite dishes and a cake. No one had told me anything. If I had known, I wouldn't have gone through all the trouble. I wouldn't have cooked so much if I had known. Why do you prioritize work so much? Timothy said Grandma was upset with me. I didn't know we had plans to go there, I replied. You should have understood or checked, Timothy told me. Apparently, Kelly had made the birthday plans during her last visit and discussed them with Stephen, but no one had informed me. Kelly's impulsive decisions always cause problems in my life, and this day was no different. Stephen assumes I should just know everything, and when I don't, he blames me for being clueless. Lately, Kelly has been nicer to Timothy, so he doesn't mind going to her house, especially because his favorite cousin, Helen, is there. Here's your birthday present from me, I said to Timothy, trying to cheer him up. He looked surprised and said, this is the same as the present Kelly gave me. I was shocked. I had carefully chosen a video game Timothy wanted after discussing it with Stephen. If Kelly knew about it, it must have been because Stephen told her. I looked at Stephen, who frowned slightly and said, giving the same gift as my sister? What kind of mother does that? I tried to explain, but we chose this together. Before I could say more, Stephen added, Kelly was struggling to pick a gift, so I suggested it. Can't you read the room? You're failing as a mother. I held back my frustration, apologized to Timothy, and put the gift away. Stephen didn't notice my distress and kept talking. By the way, my mom and brother-in-law will be away for a while, so I've decided to take care of my sister and niece, he said. What do you mean? I asked. With my older sister in the hospital, it's hard for them to live alone. I'll support them. I'll take care of their food, clothing, and shelter. So please vacate your room. It seemed Stephen had already decided. He told me to move out of my room and use it as a storage space. Timothy was excited that Kelly and Helen would be coming. Stephen added, I know you don't like them, but they're my blood relatives. It's natural for me to care for them. If you can't accept that, divorce is also an option. I felt like I was being treated as a nuisance. Seeing Timothy getting closer to their family, I knew I had to do something, not just for me, but for him too. The next day, I asked Stephen when Kelly and Helen would arrive. He didn't know the exact date, but shared the schedule he had planned. I started cleaning up unnecessary items as planned. Stephen had ordered me to dispose of or move anything we didn't need, so I followed his instructions. That day, Stephen was out at his parents' house, and I was home alone with Timothy, since it was the weekend. I organized my room and got rid of anything we weren't using. When Stephen came home, he looked shocked and said, "What on earth happened here?" "What do you mean? Is there a problem?" I asked. "Problem? Look at the state of this place," he shouted. "I did what you said. I moved things around and got rid of unnecessary items," I replied. "You mean you threw out everything we need?" Stephen exclaimed. "You even got rid of the appliances we use, like the TV and washing machine." "That's right. I cleared everything I bought for the house," I said calmly. I added, "By the way, this apartment is under my parents' name. I spoke with them and decided I'll vacate the place in a month." Stephen's face turned pale, but that wasn't my problem. He had wanted to live here with Kelly and Helen like it was his own house, even though this place was originally mine. I just did what he told me, disposed of, and moved things. "Why are all the appliances gone?" he asked, panicking. "Because I was told to move and dispose of them," I said before walking out of the living room. "Wait. The discussion isn't over," he shouted, but I ignored him. He followed me to my room, raising his voice again. "The discussion isn't over. Why are you angry?" "I'm not angry," I said. "I just followed your instructions." I picked up an expensive watch I had given him in the past and added, "Oh, this isn't needed either." "That's mine," he protested. "Yes, but I bought it," I replied. "You don't need it anymore." I packed the watch into a box, which was already filled with clothes and branded items I had gifted him while we were dating. Most of them were luxury items I had bought using my savings from when I worked as a secretary. Even though I now work part-time, I used to make enough to afford such things. Stephen's face turned even paler as he watched. Just then, the doorbell rang. The timing couldn't have been better. Ignoring him, I walked to the entrance. But this isn't over. What Stephen has done to me can't be easily forgiven. I want him to feel the pain he's caused me. I opened the door to find Kelly and Helen standing there, carrying several bags. It seemed they planned to drop off their belongings regularly. "Welcome," I greeted them with a smirk. They looked puzzled, but stepped inside. Without paying attention to their confusion, I invited them in. Once inside, I said, "Kelly, your birthday is coming up soon, right?" "Yes, but," she started. "Thanks for what you did for Timothy last time." "Here, it's a bit early, but this is a present from me," I said, handing her a box that was originally meant for Timothy. "Huh? Isn't this the one I bought?" she asked, confused. No, take it. "It's a token of my appreciation," I insisted with a smile. Kelly looked even more confused as I chuckled. "This is something special that your beloved brother and I picked out together. If you don't accept it, he'll be sad," I said. Then I revealed that the gift she had bought for Timothy was originally chosen by Stephen and me. Kelly's face turned bright red. "I need you to take this. It's a sign of my gratitude," I added firmly. She opened and closed her mouth, clearly shocked. Then, overwhelmed by my words, Kelly burst into tears. Hearing her cry, Stephen rushed over, looking pale. "Are you not ashamed? It's childish to pick on a high school student," he scolded. "It might seem childish, but I have the approval of your mom and older sister," I replied calmly. "Huh? My mom and older sister?" he asked, confused. "That's right. I explained the situation to them," I said. Stephen and Kelly had kept quiet about what was going on at their parents' house, so I hadn't known about the dinner involving Timothy. But when I spoke to my mother-in-law and older sister-in-law, they were furious. They were shocked by Stephen and Kelly's immature behavior. They couldn't believe Stephen, as an adult, would bring Kelly and Helen to our apartment without notice. They fully supported my plan. I don't often meet my older sister-in-law, but she understood my side and even encouraged me, saying, "Go ahead. Do it." Stephen tried to defend his actions, saying, "I know you don't like Kelly and Helen, but they're my blood relatives. If you can't accept that, we should get a divorce." "That's fine. Let's get a divorce then," I said, surprising him. It seemed Stephen expected me to refuse. Shocked, He watched as I handed him the divorce papers I had already prepared. Wait, he panicked as he realized I was serious. I told Stephen that the apartment had already been sold, and my belongings were moved to another place. I also had his family's approval. You want a divorce, right? I'm happy to accept. Now, sign the papers quickly. I have a bus to catch at 5 p.m., I said. Wait a minute, he protested. I repeated the same words he had once said to me. Disturbed, he eventually signed the divorce papers. Finally, I was free from him. As he hung his head, Stephen asked, "What about Timothy?" "I have his consent," I replied. "No way," he exclaimed. When I had talked to Timothy about it, he immediately agreed to come with me. I was so relieved that he chose to leave with me. This decision freed me from Stephen and his family. Afterward, Timothy and I moved into an apartment near my parents' house. Later, my former sister-in-law, who is now in a wheelchair due to her accident, came to visit with an apology gift. She apologized on behalf of her daughter and sister. Despite her situation, I didn't hold any ill feelings toward her. She had understood my struggles as a daughter-in-law and had given me advice in the past. On the other hand, I had a very hard time dealing with Stephen and Kelly. Thankfully, I will never have to deal with them again. According to my former sister-in-law, Stephen and Kelly were evicted from the apartment and had to move back to their parents' house. However, my former mother-in-law, after hearing my side of the story, refused to take them back. She said it wasn't right for them to return, given all the trouble they caused me and their plan to live together. After being scolded severely by my former sister-in-law, Kelly and Stephen had no choice. Helen, however, is now working as a tutor and occasionally helps Timothy with his studies. I started seeing a psychiatrist and consulted a lawyer on my doctor's advice. Kelly and others had spread rumors about me being sloppy and bad at organizing, which led me to take action. I received several messages from her, and this prompted legal steps. Because of this, Stephen was suspected of psychological abuse. The family court ruled in my favor and allowed me to seek compensation. When I met Stephen in family court, he yelled, "You sold my belongings." Those items were actually bought by me, not him. He was also forced to quit his job as a result of the case. Even though my lawyer tried to calm me down, I had a plan. I told Stephen, "I can return your things, but your behavior right now is still psychological abuse." "What are you saying?" He stammered. "You've been calling me sloppy for a long time. It might take me some time to return everything," I said, standing my ground. I stood my ground, refusing to back down after everything I had been through. Stephen turned red and stayed quiet, realizing the situation. His financial struggles are no concern of mine, but seeing him face the consequences of his actions is satisfying. Eventually, Stephen was found guilty of abusive behavior and was ordered to pay compensation. He and Kelly can't return to their old home, and news of their situation has spread at his workplace. Now, Stephen makes a living by juggling several temp jobs, often alongside Kelly. I think it's fitting that they're together as siblings. I don't have any contact with them, and my former in-laws also agree with this arrangement. Now, I live peacefully with my son, Timothy. After receiving the compensation, I felt more at ease. I'm especially happy to have returned part-time to my former secretarial job. My former mother-in-law and sister-in-law sometimes check in on Timothy. I thought I'd cut ties completely with my ex-husband's family, but since Timothy loves them, I occasionally interact with everyone, except Stephen and Kelly. One day, Timothy said to me, "When I grow up, I want to marry someone like Mom and cherish my family." His words nearly brought me to tears. Thinking about such a happy future, I'm determined to keep living a joyful life with my son. I've always wondered what it would feel like to be truly loved by my mom. Don't get me wrong, she took care of me. She made sure I had clothes, food, and did well in school. But when it came to love and affection, that was something she saved just for my little sister, Teresa. On the outside, our family looked perfect. Dad had a high-up job at a consulting company. Mom took care of our nice house in the suburbs. Teresa and I went to one of the best private schools around. But things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Abigail, your math test results are great, Mom would say without really looking at my report card. Then she'd quickly move on to Teresa's newest finger painting. Oh, sweetie, look at these colors. You're such a talented artist. I still remember how she'd spend hours with Teresa, helping her set up her art supplies or listening to her sing. Meanwhile, I was winning debate tournaments, getting straight A's, and taking home science fair medals. But all I ever got was a quick nod or a half smile. Dad was different. Scott Galloway loved both of us the same, but he was hardly ever home. He worked late and traveled a lot. When he was home, he tried his best to make up for lost time. "How's my little lawyer doing?" he'd say, messing up my hair while I did my homework. "And where's my future Broadway star?" he'd call out to Teresa. But those moments didn't last long. They were like random photos in an empty photo album. The only person who really noticed me was Grandpa Brandon, Dad's dad. He and Grandma Cheryl lived across town in a lovely old house that always smelled like pipe smoke and old books. When I was younger, before things changed, he used to visit often. "You're special, Abigail," he'd say with a smile in his eyes. "Smart as a whip. Don't ever let anyone dim your light." But then one day, everything changed. I was about 8 years old when I heard a fight that I'll never forget. Grandpa and Mom were in the kitchen, and their voices were louder than usual. "You can't keep this up forever, Madison," Grandpa said. His voice, normally kind, was sharp and firm. "Stay out of my personal life," Mom snapped back. "You have no right to interfere." I didn't understand what they were arguing about at the time. Not long after that, Grandma Cheryl died from a heart attack. After she passed away, Grandpa stopped coming to our house. One evening, I heard Mom talking on the phone with her friend Hannah. "Thank God that arrogant old man finally got the message," she said, sounding really angry. "I'm done with his interference." When I asked if I could visit Grandpa, Mom got very serious and angry right away. "If I ever find out you've been to see him, there will be serious consequences, Abigail. Do you understand?" I nodded, trying not to cry. I didn't understand why she would stop me from seeing the one person who really made me feel seen and loved. But I was young, and I was too scared to disobey her. At least for a while. The years went by slowly. When I turned 16, I finally found a way to see Grandpa again. I got a job as a waitress at a cozy little cafe called the Morning Brew. It was only a few blocks away from his house. It wasn't hard to trick my parents. Mom never really kept track of my schedule, and Dad was always too busy with work to notice anything. "I'll be home late today," I'd say at breakfast. Evelyn called in sick, so I'm covering for her. Mom would just wave her hand and say, "Make sure your grades stay up. Don't let that job mess with your schoolwork." But instead of working those extra hours, I'd go to Grandpa's house. It was a big old Victorian home, the same one I remembered. The first time I knocked on the door, my heart was beating so fast I thought it might explode. "Abigail?" Grandpa opened the door, eyes wide in surprise. Then tears filled his eyes. "My God, look at you. You're all grown up." That afternoon turned into many more. We'd sit in his study, eating cookies he bought just for me. He'd tell me stories about his younger days, about Dad when he was a boy, and about all the places he had traveled. Sometimes he gave me little gifts, a special book, a pretty bracelet, or an old fountain pen. One day, he placed a silver locket in my hand. "This belonged to your grandmother," he said gently. "She would have wanted you to have it." We never talked about Mom or Teresa during those visits. It was like that part of the world didn't exist when I was with him. Whenever I mentioned Mom or Teresa, Grandpa's face would go dark, and he'd quickly change the subject. I learned not to bring them up anymore. When I turned 19 and got into State University, everything changed. Moving into the dorm gave me the freedom I had wanted for years. During my first week of college, I decided it was time to stop hiding. During a weekend visit home, I looked at Mom and said, "I've been seeing Grandpa, and I'm going to keep seeing him. I'm an adult now, and I can choose who I want in my life." Mom's face turned red with anger. "After everything I told you about staying away from him, how dare you go behind my back?" Before she could say more, Dad spoke up. He looked tired but serious. "Abigail's right. She's an adult now. And Brandon is my father. If she wants to have a relationship with him, that's her decision. Mom stormed out of the room, but I felt lighter than I had in years. Finally, I didn't have to keep Grandpa's secret. I could see him freely. Over the next year, our bond grew even stronger. I'd visit him between college classes, and we'd spend hours talking, sometimes about deep things, sometimes just about small stuff. He became more than just my grandfather. He became my best friend, and someone I could tell anything to. That's why it hurts so much when he died. It happened suddenly, a big heart attack while he was working in his garden. One moment he was full of life, and the next he was gone. I got the call during my morning class. My whole world seemed to stop. I remember running out of the room, barely able to breathe, barely able to think. All those years of secret visits, all the time we had finally gotten to spend together, and just like that, he was gone. The lawyer's office felt heavy and tense when we all gathered to hear Grandpa's will. Mr. Justin, a silver-haired man who had been Grandpa's lawyer for many years, sat behind a big wooden desk. He adjusted his glasses and looked down at the papers. Dad sat stiffly, his face full of sadness. Teresa looked nervous, picking at her nails. Mom kept glancing at me, her eyes full of suspicion. I stared at my hands, trying to stay calm. "Shall we begin?" Mr. Justin asked, then cleared his throat and started reading the will. I wasn't ready for what happened next. None of us were. I, Brandon Galloway, being of sound mind, leave all my property and money to my granddaughter, Abigail Galloway. The room went completely silent. I looked up and saw everyone staring at me. The inheritance included Grandpa's Victorian house, his savings, his investments, everything. It added up to almost $1.5 million. Dad looked surprised, but didn't say a word. Teresa's eyes were wide, but she stayed quiet too. It was Mom who lost it. "This is absolutely ridiculous," she shouted, jumping out of her chair. Her face was red with anger. How could he leave everything to her? What about Teresa? What about me? This isn't fair. "Catherine, please," Dad said, trying to calm her down. But she wasn't listening. She turned to me furious. "You need to share this with your sister. Teresa deserves half. It's only fair. You can't keep all of this for yourself." I sat there, completely overwhelmed. Of course I cared about Teresa. But this was Grandpa's choice. This was what he wanted. "Mom, I didn't." "Don't mom me," she snapped. "You tricked him, didn't you? With all those secret visits over the years, you turned him against us." "Mrs. Galloway," Mr. Justin interrupted calmly, "the will is legal and final. Your father-in-law was very clear about his wishes." The rest of the meeting went by in a blur, full of legal talk and paperwork. Mom kept fuming, while Dad and Teresa stayed quiet. I could tell they were hurt. The next morning, I went back to Mr. Justin's office alone. I needed to understand the will better and see if there was a way to handle things without tearing my family apart. "Miss Galloway," Mr. Justin said, looking at me over his glasses, "there's something else you should know." He opened a drawer and pulled out a small brass key. "Your grandfather left this for you. It opens the safe in his office. He was very clear. He said you'll find the answers to your questions there." I drove to Grandpa's house in a daze, the key in my pocket feeling heavier than it should. The old Victorian home was quiet and still. Sunlight came through the windows, and little bits of dust floated in the air. My footsteps echoed on the wooden floors as I walked through the empty house. I walked into Grandpa's office. The safe was hidden behind a painting of the ocean, one I had always liked during our talks. I never knew something was hidden behind it. My hand shook as I put the key into the lock. Inside the safe were two things: a letter with my name on it in Grandpa's handwriting, and a thick envelope. I sat down in his leather chair, holding the letter with shaking hands. "My dearest Abigail," it began. I took a deep breath and started reading. "If you're reading this," the letter said, "then I'm no longer here to tell you this in person. I've struggled with this for years. What I'm about to say is hard, but you deserve to know the truth about our family." Each word hit me hard, like being punched in the chest. Grandpa explained that years ago, he had hired a private investigator. He had suspicions he couldn't ignore, questions about who Teresa's real father was. What the investigator found was clear. Mom had been having an affair for many years with a man named Gary Pearson. And the biggest shock of all, Teresa was not Dad's daughter. She was Gary's. My hands were shaking so much I had to put the letter down. I opened the envelope. Inside were dozens of photos. In the pictures, Mom was much younger and in close, romantic moments with a tall man I didn't recognize. There were also DNA test results, one for me and one for Teresa. The results confirmed what Grandpa had said. I was Dad's biological daughter. Teresa was not. It felt like everything I'd ever known came crashing down. All the years of Mom being cold to me, the way she always favored Teresa, it all suddenly made sense in the worst way. Mom didn't really love Dad, and I was a reminder of the man she didn't love. Teresa, though, was the daughter of the man she did love, Gary. Memories came rushing back. Mom always pointing out my flaws. Always praising Teresa. Her whole face would light up when Teresa walked into the room, while I felt invisible. It wasn't just favoritism. It was something deeper. Teresa and I came from 3 different kinds of love, one forced and one chosen. As I picked up Grandpa's letter again, I started to understand the full story. The argument I'd overheard as a child finally made sense. Your mother blackmailed me, Grandpa wrote. She said that if I told Scott the truth about the affair and about Teresa's real father, it would destroy him. She begged me to stay quiet. She claimed she had ended things with Gary and wanted to save her marriage. My hand was still trembling as I read on. I read how Grandpa had chosen to stay quiet, not to protect my mom, but to protect his son, my dad, and us, his grandchildren. He knew the truth would destroy everything. But keeping the secret had caused even more pain. Grandma Cheryl, the letter said, had always been sensitive when it came to family issues. Her heart was weak, and when she found out about Mom's affair, the shock was too much. She died of a heart attack that very same night. This is something I could never forgive your mother for, Grandpa wrote. Tears filled my eyes as I thought about Grandma. I remembered her warm smile, her soft hands, the way she used to brush my hair while humming old songs. Her death had always felt sudden, but now I knew the sad truth behind it. My dearest Abigail, Grandpa's letter went on. I'm leaving you everything I have, not just because I love you, but because you are truly my family. You're Scott's daughter, a true Galloway. I believe you will use this inheritance wisely and kindly. He also wrote, you are free to share the money however you think is right. My only hope is that you use the truth to bring justice to our family in whatever way you believe is best. The letter ended with a final apology for leaving me with such a heavy truth. But I knew there was no going back now. After a long, sleepless night thinking about everything, I made a decision. That Sunday, I drove to my parents' house. The envelope with all the evidence was safe in my bag. Mom opened the door with her usual cold expression. But this time it didn't hurt like it used to. Now I understood why she'd never been able to truly love me. We need to talk, I said firmly, walking into the living room, the same room where I had spent years trying to make her proud. There's nothing to talk about, she snapped. You need to share the inheritance with Teresa, or I'll take you to court. You can't keep it all. I took a deep breath. I know everything, Mom. About Teresa's real father. About your affair with Gary Pearson. About how Grandma really died. Her face went pale, but she quickly tried to act normal again. That's nonsense, she said. What are you even talking about? Grandpa hired a private investigator. I continued, my voice steady, even though my heart was racing. I have the photos, the DNA tests, everything, I said. And I'm willing to share the inheritance with Teresa, but only if you tell Dad and Teresa the truth. Mom's face twisted with anger. How dare you try to blackmail me, she shouted. Do you really think I'd risk losing my marriage and my relationship with Teresa just because you're making threats? Go ahead, try to ruin me. I'll make sure everyone knows what a greedy, manipulative person you are. No one will believe you. They'll believe the DNA test, I said quietly. Get out of my house, she screamed. And don't think for 1 second I won't fight back. I'll ruin your name before you can ruin mine. That evening, I sat in my dorm room trying to calm down and understand everything that had happened. Then my phone started buzzing with notifications. When I opened Facebook, my heart sank. Mom had posted a long message about me, and it was already getting a lot of attention. "I never thought I'd have to do this," her post began, "but I need to warn everyone about the cruel and manipulative actions of my daughter." She wrote that I had turned Grandpa against the whole family, that I tricked him into leaving me everything, and that I was refusing to share anything with Teresa. She said I had become greedy and heartless. Her post painted me as some kind of master manipulator. She claimed I secretly visited Grandpa for years to poison his mind and take his money. Now, she said, I was trying to tear the family apart with lies and wild accusations. "This is not the daughter we raised," she ended the post. My hands shook as I read through the comments. "Aunt Christina, I always knew something wasn't right with that girl." "Uncle Ronald, shameful behavior." "Scott raised her better." My cousin Carolyn, "Money really shows who people are." Even Mom's friend Hannah added, "She's always been difficult, Madison." Now everyone sees it. The post kept spreading. People I hadn't seen in years were suddenly judging me. Comment after comment, calling me selfish, greedy, and heartless. Childhood family friends were now acting like they knew everything about me, all agreeing that I had fooled Grandpa Brandon just to get his money. I closed my laptop and lay back on my bed, staring at the ceiling. Mom thought she could destroy me by shaming me in front of everyone. But all she did was make my next move clear. 4 days later, after a lot of careful planning, I picked up my phone and called home. Mom answered after the second ring. "What do you want?" she said coldly. "I've been thinking," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Maybe you're right. Maybe we should talk about this as a family. I'd like to come home for dinner and try to make peace, just the four of us." There was a short pause. "Sunday works," she said, her voice suddenly warmer. "I'll make your favorite lasagna." "Perfect," I replied, letting a small smile appear on my face. "I'm looking forward to clearing everything up." After we hung up, I walked to my desk and opened Grandpa's envelope. Everything I needed was inside. Mom thought she had won by turning everyone against me on social media, but she had no idea what I was planning. Sunday's dinner would change everything. This time, I would be the one in control of the story. When Sunday evening came, the air was thick with tension. I was the only one who knew what was really coming. Mom had made the lasagna, and the familiar smell filled the dining room. It almost felt like things were normal, but I knew they weren't. We sat around the table. Dad at the head, Mom on his right, Teresa next to her, and me across from them. "Before we eat," I said, setting down my fork, "I'd like to say something." Mom smiled proudly and picked up her wine glass. "Of course, dear." "I've been thinking a lot," I began, watching her closely. "About family, about fairness, and about what Grandpa really wanted." Mom's smile got even bigger. "I've decided that Teresa and I should split the inheritance equally." "Oh, Abigail," Mom said, beaming with pride. "I'm so proud of you for doing the right thing. I knew you'd come around." Teresa gave me a small, grateful smile. Dad nodded, clearly relieved. "This shows real maturity," Mom added, clearly enjoying the moment. "I'm glad you were finally ashamed of how you acted before and decided to make things right." I let her words hang in the air for a moment. I smiled slightly. Her little speech made what I was about to do even more powerful. "Actually," I said softly, "there's something else I need to say." I reached into my bag and pulled out Grandpa's letter. "There's a reason Grandpa left everything to me," I said. "And it's time you all knew why." Mom's face turned pale. "Abigail, don't." But I had already started reading. "My dearest Abigail, what I'm about to share will be hard to hear, but you deserve to know the truth about our family." I read out loud about the private investigator, about Gary Pearson, and about the affair. Every now and then I looked up. Mom stared down at the tablecloth. Her face went from pale white to bright red. Dad's face showed shock, then confusion, then anger. Teresa held the edge of the table, her hands shaking. "The DNA test confirmed everything," I said, keeping my voice steady. Teresa isn't Scott's daughter. She's the child of your mother's lover. This is ridiculous. Mom tried to interrupt, but her voice was shaking. I have proof, I said, pulling out the envelope. There were photos of her with Gary Pearson, hugging him, kissing him, walking hand in hand. Dozens of moments caught by the private investigator. There were also DNA test results. Dad snatched the envelope from me, his hands shaking. The photos spilled across the table. Everyone saw them. Mom in the arms of a dark-haired man. Then Dad picked up the DNA papers. The medical words made it clear. The truth was real. How could you? Dad's voice was full of quiet rage. All these years, all these lies. I can explain. Mom cried, her makeup running down her face. Scott, please. It's not what you think. I was young. I was confused. Confused? Dad shouted. He stood up so fast his chair fell over. You had an affair. You got pregnant. You let me raise another man's child, and you call that confused? Teresa pushed back her chair and ran upstairs. Mom tried to follow her, but Dad stepped in front of her. Don't you dare, he said in a low, angry voice. Don't you dare go after her. You've done enough. Mom stood there crying, begging him to forgive her. The months after that dinner were a blur, full of meetings with lawyers and major changes in our family. Dad filed for divorce right away. His lawyer said he had every right to claim most of what they owned because of Mom's years of lies. A week later, I met Teresa at a quiet cafe. Her eyes were red and puffy. She hadn't stopped crying since that night. I don't even know who I am anymore, she whispered, staring at her full coffee cup. You're my sister, I said, reaching across the table and taking her hand. Maybe not by blood, but by heart. That will never change. We talked for hours. I showed her Grandpa's letter again and explained everything. How he found out, how it hurt Grandma, and why he chose to stay quiet all those years. I want you to have half of the inheritance, I told her. Grandpa left that decision to me. And you're still my sister, no matter what the DNA says. Teresa started crying again, but this time, she smiled too. I kept my promise and split the inheritance equally with Teresa. We used some of the money to help Dad start over. He had moved into a small apartment and had to rebuild his life from the ground up. Once the truth came out, the social media storm completely changed. The same relatives who had rushed to judge me suddenly went quiet, then started sending me messages to apologize. I'm so sorry for what I said, Aunt Christina wrote. I had no idea what your mother had done. We should have never judged without knowing the full story. Uncle Ronald messaged me too. You handled everything with strength and grace. Even Hannah, Mom's best friend, reached out. I supported Catherine for years, not knowing the pain she caused. I hope you can forgive me for being so harsh. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I wonder if I did the right thing. Was it worth it? Was exposing the truth really worth all the pain? The damage to Teresa, the end of my parents' marriage, the public mess? But then I remember the years I spent feeling ignored. I remember how Mom lied and twisted things to control everyone. I think about how deeply she hurt Dad by hiding the truth for so long. I remember Grandma Cheryl, who died because the shock was too much for her. And I remember Grandpa, who carried this heavy secret alone, trying to protect us all until the very end. No, I didn't do this out of revenge. I did it for justice. For Dad, because he deserved to know the truth about his marriage. For Teresa, because she deserved to know who she really was. For Grandma, because her death deserved an explanation. And for Grandpa, because he trusted me to set things right. Mom still lives in town, but I haven't spoken to her since that night. Sometimes I see her posts online where she tells a new version of the story, one where she's the victim of a cruel and ungrateful family. But not many people believe her anymore. The truth has a way of standing strong, no matter how many lies are told. Dad, Teresa, and I have become closer than ever. We have dinner together every week, helping each other heal. Teresa is studying art therapy now. She wants to use her experience to help others going through family pain. Dad has started dating again. Slowly, he's learning to trust.